Alright, so in this video I'm going to try and explain the version history of Angular because it can be a bit confusing, so hopefully this clears up any questions that you may have. So this is a list of the major releases of Angular so far, and at this point we're on version 5, and I believe they plan to make a new release every 6 months or so. But the changes will mostly be under the hood, so even if version 6 is out, this course and all Angular 5 courses will still be relevant and may just need a couple lecture updates. Now, one thing you may notice here is that there was no Angular 3, at least a major release of Angular 3. Well, that's because version 3 was skipped due to the misalignment of the router package, okay, from the rest of the packages included in the framework. So the Angular team decided to go right to Angular 4 from version 2. And this way, all of the core packages, including the router, matched. And it may seem like it wouldn't have been a big deal, but apparently it would have caused a lot of issues internally. So they took the risk and they just skipped version 3 altogether. So they did this to avoid confusing things internally, but it did cause some confusion for developers that were using or wanted to use Angular. And I think there may have been other reasons that it was skipped, but I do know that the misalignment of the router package was a huge issue. All right, so back in, I believe, 2010, Google released AngularJS, which was a competitor to frameworks like Backbone and Ember. These were really popular frameworks at the time. This was before React and Vue.js. AngularJS used something called controllers and scope, and these were two of the main aspects of the framework. The scope is defined to bind data from the model and from the view. Now, AngularJS is completely different than Angular 2 Plus because Angular 2 Plus does not use controllers and scope. It uses components, okay? And there were no components in AngularJS. Now, there are still developers that do use AngularJS, so just realize that AngularJS and Angular are two completely different frameworks, and they work in very different ways. So back in 2015, I believe, Angular 2 was released, which was a complete rewrite of the framework, and this really kind of confused people, developers that were already working with Angular or trying to get into it. Controllers and scope are out and components are in. Okay, and you did have some pissed off developers because, I mean, if you think about it, you have, if you have been working with AngularJS and you have a bunch of clients where you've built applications for them in this framework, and then the new version comes out and it's completely different. There's no backward compatibility. I mean, I guess you could upgrade it to Angular 2, but it's basically like rewriting the entire application in a new framework. So you did have a lot of pissed off developers, and some people just did away with Angular completely. So then we had Angular 4 released in 2017, and now it's supposed to be just called Angular. Okay, so not Angular 4, even though a lot of people do still call it Angular 4 and Angular 5, and I'm sure when version 6 is released, that'll be called Angular 6. But it's all just Angular. And version 4 is completely backward compatible with version 2. In fact, there's very few updates on the surface and with the syntax, much like Angular 4 to 5. Now, the main focus of 2 to 4 and 4 to 5 is to reduce the size of the framework, make it more compact, and make it compile faster. So most changes are under the hood. Okay, Angular 5, as I said, is backward compatible with version 2 and 4. Most changes are under the hood. The focus is on speed and size. There is a new HTTP module. The old one is deprecated, but it can still be used. And there's also been some changes with pipes. Those are the basic changes on the surface that had to be updated with this course. So hopefully that clears up any confusion. Just know that even if you're watching this course and Angular 6 is released or Angular 7, it will be updated, but there's only so much that needs to be updated on the surface. It's mostly under the hood to make the framework faster and more compact. Okay, so that's going to be it for this section, guys. In the next one, we're going to start to set up our environment. We're going to look at the Angular CLI, create our sandbox application, and we'll go from there.